If you're a growth oriented person on a mission to create more love, happiness, and success in your life, this podcast is for you. I'm Dr. Lisa Marie Bobby. I'm founder of Growing Self Counseling and Coaching. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, a licensed psychologist, a certified coach, and every week I am here as your partner in growth to help you create transformation in your life. That's what we do in my counseling practice. What we do at Growing Self is very different, and I'm here with every episode of this podcast to support you in this journey as well because you deserve it. So, today we're talking about a topic that is very near and dear to my own heart, which is why your marriage is worth saving. Marriage is hard. And if you ever think about giving up or wonder if there's something wrong, if you should be doing something different, I just want to tell you right off the bat, you are not alone in that. When you and your partner are going through a rough patch in your relationship, it's easy to start fantasizing about how easy it would be to start over with somebody new, or how simple it would be to embrace all the perks of single life. But today, I'm going to tell you about why your marriage is probably worth fighting for and all of the benefits that you can experience, not just relationally, but also personally because of doing so. So I'm glad that you're here. And I have a lot of things planned for you today. We're going to be diving into a lot of stuff. Get ready to take notes. And also, think about, as you're listening to this, who you might want to share this episode with. Possibly your partner, possibly a friend or loved one who's going through a rough patch and maybe feeling ambivalent and not really sure what the next step forward is. I made this to help you, to help them. So thank you for helping me spread the word. For better or for worse, we live in a culture that often threatens relationships. When we're going through a hard time or feeling bad about something that's going on, it's very easy to find lots of people to tell you it's not you, it's them. Leave it behind, find somebody new. There's more fish in the sea. And I tell you what, if you're dating, you might be right about that. I also serve as a dating coach, one of the hats I wear. And one of the messages that I often convey to my dating coaching clients is that, when you're dating somebody, it's an audition. You're really trying to figure out who that person is, what they're made of, what their character is. Is there enough there to build a life with someone? And so, if you're in that situation, if you're dating or in a newer relationship and trying to figure out if you should continue moving this forward or not, I would encourage you to go back and listen to some of the podcasts that I've recorded about that experience. You can find them on my website, growingself.com. Go to the blog and podcast section, click on love when you're there, and then from there, you'll find the dating content collection that has all kinds of articles and podcasts that are really devoted to that life experience to help you get some clarity about whether or not you want to continue seeing if this might be a relationship that is for you. If you do that well, you will hopefully commit and marry someone who has a lot of those foundational fundamentals. In my mind, being married or in a long term committed relationship is a different animal than a new relationship, a situation where you're dating. You're doing a good job if you're thinking about whether or not you should stay in this. I don't know, maybe you shouldn't. Like picking the right partner, somebody who has enough compatibility, enough shared values, enough of the character traits that will sustain a strong and enduring partnership. That's really important work. So, support for you there. This podcast is all about helping you understand the path of growth in a marriage that has been feeling difficult. So, or a long-term committed partnership where you two are invested in each other. There's a history there. Maybe you have some kids in the mix because there's a different path of growth that is bound by commitment, and in my mind, also bound by love that's different than somebody that you're just getting to know. So with that in mind, we're going to be diving into the reasons why your marriage just might be worth preserving, nurturing, and developing, because that's the operant word here. So first of all, we're going to be talking about why probably a lot of what you're going through is normal. Literally, all relationships have challenges. And I think as soon as we all wrap our heads around that fact, all of this all of a sudden feels much easier. So we're going to be talking about that. Also, we're going to be understanding the power of commitment and how that in itself can lead to transformational growth if you know how to use it. We will also be talking about the really unique growth opportunities that you can only gain when you work through relationship rough patches. It can transform you and your partner in really positive ways. And then lastly, we're going to be going into the heart of this, which is exploring your future, your legacy, your values, and really, the life trajectory that you are on. We're going to be talking about that in a clear and hopefully helpful way. So to dive right in, at the core of every strong marriage is the power of commitment. The very first thing to know here is that all relationships have challenges because that's how they work. All couples go through challenging times together. It's not a bug, it's a feature. That is how we become married. It is by working through those difficulties and growing together. Because consider, it's one thing to get married, right? Having the ceremony, having the party, eating cake, whatever. It's a piece of cake. No pun intended. Pun intended. Okay, fine. But it's a totally different thing to actually become married. That is a process that doesn't even begin until the honeymoon phase is over, because unfortunately, we don't even know where we need to learn and grow until we have conflict about it. Stepping on each other's toes, getting upset with your partner, or having them get mad at you is how we learn where we need to make those changes. Those skirmishes outline the current boundaries, and the process of becoming married is the process of redrawing those boundaries, but also developing each of yourselves in response to this person that you've committed to. So becoming married usually involves learning how to communicate with each other, learning how to show each other love and respect, learning how to work together as a team around, shared life, like who does what around the house, parenting, finances. Also learning to honor and respect each other's boundaries, love languages, learning how to prioritize your relationship, but also learning, I think, about your own growth opportunities and learning how to love and accept each other for who you each actually are. I know that this is a lot of work, and I think the myth in our culture is that if you met the right person, it wouldn't feel as difficult. You wouldn't have conflict, you wouldn't have all the stuff to work through. And that isn't true. I think when we're dating, we need to do a good enough job of finding somebody who's relatively solid, somebody that we can build a foundation with. And it's also true that anybody that you're with is going to be their own flavor of weirdo. Just like you're a weirdo, we're all a mixed bag. And it's only when we get into relationships with other people, deep, intimate relationships with other people, is all of that revealed, right? And so this is a process that is hashed out over many fights, tense exchanges. And I mean, even if you think back, like, how many months did you spend planning your wedding? Like, plan on it taking 3 times as long as that to successfully become married and work through this stuff. And FYI, many couples will put this work off, not fully doing the work of becoming married until many, often long years after the actual wedding occurred. And so, in this experience, it's really helpful to remind yourself that all relationships have strengths, all relationships have challenges, and this is the path of growing together and becoming like a really solid, strong couple. This is how it works. And what's also normal is because we're socialized in our culture to believe that it should be easier than it actually is. Again, that myth of like the right person or compatibility, um, we can feel ambivalent and think, is this normal? Is something wrong? Did I marry the wrong person? Did I make a wrong choice? Should I keep doing this? And so that kind of questioning is normal because of what we've been taught to believe about relationships, which is really inaccurate. And also, the very cool thing about this is that over the course of this experience, it reveals so much about all of us. It reveals so much about you and your partner, like your expectations for what this should have been, your map of the world about what love is, what a normal relationship is, what should be happening, which is all very much defined by your history, your family of origin experiences, your life experiences. And so it's really like it helps both of you gain a ton of clarity about who you are, who the other person is. And then that understanding helps you build those bridges to the center. And along the way, it evolves both of you in very positive ways. But so that's just really the first point. Just because this feels hard doesn't necessarily mean that something is dramatically or catastrophically wrong. Sorry to be the one to tell you this, but this is true. Okay, so with that in mind, let's also then talk about another really important aspect of this, which is the power of commitment and why this is so important and ultimately so positive, I think, for both of you. Because at the core of every strong marriage or long term committed partnership is this fundamental commitment. Like, you are my person. I choose you. We're doing this together. I'm yours, you're mine, right? Because marriage, it's more than just a legal contract or a ceremony. I have yet actually to meet a married person who has told me otherwise. People who aren't married yet will say, oh, it's just a ceremony, it's just a piece of paper. I have not actually heard that from somebody who has been married, because they have this experience of a deeper level of commitment to love, to support, to grow together, to just stand up in front of a whole bunch of people and say the words, sickness and in health, richer and poorer, until death do you part. That's what we say in the ceremony and at the party. But it's easy to lose sight of that big picture, that commitment that you made when you're hurt or when you're angry or when you've been struggling for a while and not getting anywhere, when you're not having a good time. Like, why shouldn't you start to question about whether this is all worthwhile? And I think also what's really important is that when people really begin to lose hope in their relationship, that's when your relationship is really in trouble, is when you stop believing that change is possible. You stop believing that it could be different or that it could be better. And in my experience, oftentimes that comes from not really understanding what needs to happen in order for change to occur. When you can't see the path forward, you can't believe that more is possible, and all you have is what's in front of you. And yeah, I say, I don't want to spend the next 40 years of my life doing this, which is completely valid. But I hope that through today's podcast, you'll get some clarity around what this transformation can look like and how to achieve it in your relationship so that it gives you not just direction, but like also hope. And first of all, is coming back to this commitment to growth and understanding that we are all on a developmental trajectory of growth over the course of our lifespan. None of us ever stop growing. And by believing that and embracing that, it's incredibly hopeful because it paints a picture of what could be. That needs to be reality based. Nobody's doing us any favors if it's, delusional optimism. But to really understand what growth means and how it works for you and your partner, so many doors can open up when you really get that. Also, to reframe the challenge, to identify even conflict, as the opportunity for connection. I have recorded a number of past podcasts around communication and emotional intimacy, and in working with countless couples in marriage counseling over so many years of doing this, what I see over and over again is that the whole experience of conflict can be transformed when you can shift back into, oh, my partner is trying to communicate about something that is really important to them that may be different than how I think or feel. But by listening and seeking to understand what's happening right now in a loving and generous way, that connection just turns into this beautiful opportunity for really powerful connection, because now all of a sudden we're talking in an emotionally safe environment about something that is really important. When we get escalated, elevated, hurt, angry, it means that we've just made contact with something that's pretty deep. All conflict goes deep, and understanding what that means to your partner is the doorway for emotional intimacy. So if one of the things that you've been telling yourself is, well, I really wish we had more emotional connection in our relationship, notice how the way you may be handling conflict currently could actually be an obstacle to creating the emotional intimacy that you really want. Just pro tip there. You can find more podcasts on this topic if you go into my website. So growingself.com, go to the blog and podcast, and from there you'll enter the love collection. And there is a content collection that I've created for you called Communication That Connects. If you go into that, you'll find all kinds of articles, curated podcast playlists that talk more about some of the communication strategies that I just alluded to. Also, understanding how the growth process works is really vital. I can't tell you how many people I have talked to who are feeling so hopeless, so discouraged about their relationship, even people who think they are in couples counseling. Because most therapists who provide couples counseling, marriage counseling, relationship coaching, whatever, are not licensed marriage and family therapists. They are at best clinical mental health therapists who went through all kinds of coursework and learning experiences that trained them how to diagnose and treat mental health conditions in individuals, which is a totally different thing than what a marriage and family therapist learns how to do. The education is different. The professional experiences are different. The way of working with relationships is completely different. It's a systemic perspective that is absolutely unique to marriage and family therapists. I had an experience not too long ago where I connected with a young woman who was really in a tough place in her relationship. And you know what? I didn't even need to know all the details. I was like, have you done couples counseling with a licensed marriage and family therapist who practices evidence-based approaches to couples and family therapy? And immediately it was like, no. And this person was gearing up to maybe separate from her husband, kids involved, like, it's a big deal, but had literally not really had the opportunity to do the kind of growth work that would allow them to even know whether growth and change were possible in her relationship. And that is so common. That is why people come to my practice, Growing Self, is because what we do is so different. It's a transformational growth experience for relationships that you can't find anywhere. So if you've been sitting on the fence thinking about, do we do this or not? Consider whether or not you've actually gotten the right kind of help and support. So if you haven't done that yet, I would encourage you to slow down and consider getting that kind of help before you decide what you want to do, either way. So, understanding how it works, but then finally understanding and really kind of diving into your own personal values around love. Like, what is love? I don't know about your personal definition of love, mine. And I think we all have to create this to a degree for ourselves, but mine is doing the right thing for the highest and best of another person. So, this entire concept of somebody that I love, their rights, needs, feelings, pain, hopes, dreams are just as important as mine are. And if I love somebody, I am devoted to their well-being. That's what helps me show up and be a good parent. That's the way I try to show up for my husband of coming up on 30 years now. And I can tell you that this is not always easy, but I think it's really tapping into what love means, because love is not about me having a good time all the time. It's about me really, I think, serving a higher purpose for another person, but also myself. I mean, self-love is certainly part of this. And I would never advise anybody to be operating in a way that may be helpful or positive to another person at the very real detriment of your own well-being. Once you're clear on the whys here, the other thing that's really important to keep in mind is about the amazing growth opportunity that is available to both of you because of the challenges that you are facing in this relationship. Sadly, I think many couples, they get married, they get 4, 5, 6 years in, and not understanding that growth process, they hit a wall and sometimes sadly will crash and burn during this normal growth process when they think that the relational turbulence they're experiencing means that there's something intrinsically wrong with their relationship. Every once in a while, there is a genuinely toxic situation where a marriage should end. It is actually for the highest and best of all involved. There could be safety concerns, or where one person just is not functioning at close to the level that would be required to have a sustainable relationship. And it's also important to get support and trustworthy guidance in order to differentiate that kind of situation from the garden variety relationship frustrations, communication issues, friction around sexual intimacy, financial, like the way people handle money, parenting styles. I mean, that is super common. And in my experience, these are solvable problems. I'll share something personal with you. I like to pick up rocks. I like bowls of rocks. I don't know why I like rocks. I like rocks and I like plants. And so I pick up rocks. And here are examples of a couple rocks that I've picked up. And notice like the sharp edges, right? Like these are rocks that just broke away from the mother rock or whatever, landed somewhere and stayed that way. These are two other rocks. that are similar, kind of the same material, but so different. These are rocks that have been tumbling around together probably for years, decades, maybe even centuries, but bashing in on other rocks. And over time, they became smooth, they became soft, they became rounded. And it's because of that conflict. It's because of bashing into each other, that the sharp corners get knocked off of us. We get the opportunity to develop into more loving, empathetic, responsive, compassionate, I think unconditionally loving people because of being in relationships with each other. If we were just sitting there by ourselves, we stay this way. We don't get to be transformed. So there's a lot of value in this process. And I think it's worth considering what your evolution trajectory looks like, what you want it to look like. I mean, can you imagine, if the goal is to improve communication, right? Imagine what your life experience would be like when this is resolved, and feels emotionally safe. Communication is not always easy. I won't guarantee that, but you have a way of working through things that makes it okay. Like communication is productive. Also, though, over time, successful couples develop a set of agreements that you're both on board with. You have systems in place that allow your life to run smoothly. And also, you know, through this work, getting to know each other on a much deeper and more emotionally intimate level helps you be more aware of and responsive to your partner's feelings, needs, wounds, so that you're not constantly triggering each other's anger or anxiety. Or when you do, you can recognize it and repair it. So, again, that's another important thing. Successful couples, it isn't that they don't have conflict or like moments, right? It's that they can repair, it becomes productive. And also that most of the time, they're operating from love, supporting each other's hopes and dreams, both people feeling loved and respected, and having a good time together, even having sex. Yes, it can be fun and wonderful, but you have to work through that in order to create the kind of reality that you want to have. And I believe that this is possible for you because with all couples, there's always work to be done between here and there. So begin the growth process by reconsidering these expectations that it should be easy. And also, just to give you a little timeline, so I've been married for a long time. My husband and I have been together since 1993. And I think that we began to figure all this stuff out around year 5 after we got married, 4 to 5. And that was after going through a really yucky rough patch that probably lasted way too long. I didn't know what I know now. This is well before I ever went to counseling school to become a marriage and family therapist. But I think both of us were just so frustrated and were trying to do what we knew how to do and didn't know how to change it. And like nothing was changing. And it was meh. But anyway, we had the great fortune to connect for probably, 8, 10 sessions with a marriage counselor who was really able to help us improve communication, develop these systems and processes, but more importantly, regain this empathy for each other so that I think, in our minds, each of us had started being like the enemy, this person who's like victimizing me somehow, as opposed to, this person that I love and care about who is fighting their own inner battle, just like I am. And again, just reconnecting with that softness. It was really transformational for us. I don't know what would have become of us if we hadn't had that experience together fairly early on. But here is my last point about growth. Again, buying into this myth. This is harder than it should be. Then a close second. If I were in a different relationship with a different person, none of these things would be happening. Maybe the exact same things wouldn't be happening, but you would essentially be trading one collection of frustrations and growth work for a different collection of frustrations and growth work. No matter who you're with, you're going to do some of this sooner or later. And the thing that I think is very important to consider is that all of the relationship issues, like on your side of the street, will follow you into whatever situation you go into next, unless you have the opportunity to really work on your own stuff in the context of whatever relationship. So might as well be this one, right? It's happening now for you to be able to gain insight into yourself, your triggers, your expectations, your own way of being, your own sharp corners and how they impact other people. You won't have the opportunity to do that any other way. Even if you go into individual therapy or coaching, I can tell you, because I work with individual therapy and coaching clients as well as couples. And with individual clients, not saying that we can't do a lot of great work, because we always can, but as an individual, you're a self-reporter. I'm only understanding your experience from what you tell me, contrasted by sitting with two people on the couch, and one person has this very strong narrative around, like, here's what's going on, and their partner is like, actually, here's how I experience the same situation. That is so powerful. That is a gift. In a lot of relationships in our lives, if people have an issue with you, they just back up, right? Friends drift away. Maybe your sister doesn't call as often and, oh, well, she's just busy. Okay, maybe, yes, maybe that is true. But also, you have a lot of people in your life who are not invested enough in you, in this relationship, to fight with you about what's going on. It takes a lot of courage, commitment, passion to say, this is really bothering me, and I really want this to be different. What's going on here? What is this attached to? Why are you showing up this way with me? What can we do differently? That kind of caring pretty much only happens in the context of our most intimate relationships. And so that's just another little reframe for you. If you're hearing stuff like that from your partner and getting all like defensive or like, I'm being attacked right now. Okay, maybe. And, what would happen if you let some of this in, provided that this is a fundamentally healthy situation, there's a strong foundation of love and caring. I am not suggesting that anybody subject themselves to an abusive relationship or any kind of toxic situation. But again, sometimes it can be difficult to assess the difference. I've met so many people, especially in this day and age, where if someone is upset with them or takes issue, like, you hurt my feelings, I didn't like that. It's easy to label that person as a narcissist. You're gaslighting me. This is abusive, because it's not like a comfy situation. It's just, I think, a very powerful reframe to consider. What could I learn here? What would happen if I listened to how maybe I'm impacting this other person, and if I prioritized love and growth in this situation? These are uncomfortable conversations. Any kind of growth is uncomfortable. Again, that's how it works. But if you want to be successfully married or partnered to anyone, sooner or later, you're going to have to work on your own ability to communicate, to show love and respect in ways that are meaningful to the person that you're with. You have to work together in a way that feels balanced, negotiate boundaries, advocate for yourself, right? And this isn't just my opinion. I mean, the research shows a very clear and significant relationship between the number of marriages people attempt and the subsequent success rates of those marriages. So, and also, like, despite common misconceptions about high divorce rates, what's true is that most couples in first time marriages who come into marriage from a place of strength in terms of their age, well being, other things, can often make this work. But it's very skewed when it comes to second marriages, which have a much higher divorce rate. Variables that impact that. I mean, certainly second marriages with children involved are not for the faint of heart. Any kind of step parenting situation is just by definition incredibly challenging. And if you're listening to this in that context, I would invite you to get help and support from somebody with true expertise. So a marriage and family therapist with lots of experience in working with step families, blended families, because the family dynamics at work in the situation are well above and beyond anything related to your relationship as a couple. It's hard work. But that said, even without that dynamic, second marriages, third marriages are often frequently troubled and haunted by ghosts of the past. I believe it's because people just got out of one relationship and into another, assuming that it would be better and different because you're with a different person now, and not really understanding the patterns and the things that they were carrying with them, the ways of being that will always be problematic until you have the opportunity to work through. So the punchline here is that no matter how many partners you churn through, the patterns in your relationships are unlikely to change until you do. This can mean the way we show up with others, but also internal work here around how we set boundaries, advocate for ourselves, how we stay connected to how we feel, what we need, and can we have courageous conversations about that? I mean, there's so much here. But in this situation, if you're listening to this, you're already married, you've already made the vows. So why not double down on your commitment and do the work right here? Right? Because if you do that, your very worst case scenario is that you will grow into a stronger, healthier person, more capable of having a high quality relationship with other people and with yourself. And on the other hand, if you do all this work and ultimately do decide to leave, you will do so knowing that you did your very best, right? Many people who wind up leaving relationships have an enormous amount of guilt, regret, second guessing on the other side of it, even if like it kind of made sense at the time. It can be haunted for many years afterwards. So if you really apply yourself to this work, if at the end of the day it is not sustainable and it shouldn't continue, you'll have a lot of clarity around that decision and will feel good about it, as opposed to, did I do the right thing? And of course, the best possible outcome is that because of doing this work, you will create the amazing, satisfying, intimate, and happy marriage that you've always wanted, that you've always deserved. And that love can last a lifetime, but you have to do the work. So those are the doors ahead. I can't really see a bad one here. So no downsides. No downsides to working on this. Okay, very lastly, why your marriage is worth saving is because, there are future elements here. There are legacy elements to this, and it's tied into your life trajectory, like who you are. And this is especially true if you have children. Because, for all of us, I'm a mom, and if you're a parent, I don't think any loving parent missed the memo that, like, as soon as you become a parent, you had other people in the world that you're committed to taking care of, in a trustworthy and loving way, and that they're depending on you to help them in this moment, but also help them in their own life path, their own trajectory into the future that you wish for them. And so I think that in cases where there is a marriage with kids, I personally believe that we have to work even harder to see what we can do to make this better before potentially calling it quits. And though, again, disclaimer here, I'm very pro marriage, obviously, pro committed relationship. I am not necessarily anti-divorce because, as I mentioned previously, sometimes ending a relationship, even a marriage with kids, can be the most responsible thing to do if two people have discovered that it is a more toxic and damaging for everybody involved to maintain the relationship than it would be to end it with as much love and grace as possible. Um, and or if there is it is missing the level of commitment necessary to make the changes that are required to have a healthy marriage with each other and a healthy home. Um, and I will also share that in my experience, many times people do fantasize a little bit about divorce. Like, there's the exit door, there's the off ramp. I won't be experiencing the stress and frustration and hurt feelings and all the things if I was divorced. And if you have children, you are often signing up for a whole different set of problems. I have talked to many now single parents co-parenting who are in absolute agony around having to drop their beautiful baby children off at this hostile person's house for half the week and every other weekend, particularly if they don't like them, they don't trust them, and have to now surrender these vulnerable kids to them. It's very difficult, and factoring in, okay, now there's new partners running around, there's difference in parenting. Some people are worried about their kids in the care of the other person, and it can be very, very stressful, frustrating, angering, and it can be difficult to figure out which is the path, right? Like, it feels like I don't have good options on either side. Either I'm signing up to feel frustrated in this marriage that, maybe it is what it is, or am I signing up to feel frustrated and angry and hurt with the co-parenting arrangement? Like, this is hard. Aside from that, when we think about being a parent in a marriage, what I often think about when I'm working with couples who are working on their relationship, I'm seeing beyond them. Certainly, they both deserve to have a nice time with each other and in their marriage. And I am always thinking about, what are these two people going to be modeling and teaching these little kids who are watching what they do? You have an opportunity to teach your children by example how to grow and evolve out of love and a desire for growth and service to a higher purpose, right? How do you do that? I know that you would love for your children to be in healthy, happy, sustainable relationships for the rest of their lives, but how do they do that? I also work with many individuals who came out of families where the parents got divorced, and what they learned was that conflict means relationship rupture It means things come apart. It means people fall out of love and can't put it back together again. It means that people are so fundamentally different that there is no way to build a bridge to the center. That's not true. And they grow into adults believing that it is true. So for you to do this work and have your children watch you figure out, okay, how do I communicate in an emotionally safe way? How do I show up in a way that promotes connection rather than conflict? How do I practice love and acceptance for my partner as they are, and instead focus on their strengths and all of the wonderful things about them, even though the situation is not perfectly perfect? The path to creating a beautiful, loving marriage is not all about changing your partner on every level or changing yourself to be perfectly pleasing for this other person. It's really about, again, cultivating this intention of love. I love and respect and appreciate you for who you actually are. All personal qualities have light sides and dark sides. Somebody who is very conscientious and trustworthy and always follows through is going to be the same person who cares a lot about how the dishwasher is unloaded, when it is unloaded, who is going to be unloading the dish. Like there's all kinds of stuff. People who are flexible, tolerant, accepting, can, see people from different points of view, empathetic, can be scattered, putting their keys in the wrong place, forget to wash the dishwasher. Like, personal qualities, they come in clusters. And one of, I think, the most beautiful growth experiences that I've seen over and over and over again in couples who do this work is figuring out how to reconnect with their love for who the other person is, that's characterized more by acceptance than it is by change. And so, again, for your children to be watching that, watching you two do this hard work, have conflict, and then successfully repair it with each other, it creates an environment of emotional safety and also a deep understanding of how relationships really work, that will prepare them to go out into the world and create the kind of relationships and marriages that you really want for them. So I think that is an important thing to consider. And what we're talking about right now goes back to this last point around who are you and what do you stand for? I think it's important for all of us to be clear around our own guiding values. Mine are growth, love, happiness, and success. And figuring out how to express your most deeply held values with and for your partner is where this commitment and the energy to do this kind of work often comes from. So I would consider, for your own growth work, as you're thinking about what to do here, how to connect with your own most important values and how to be true to those values as you take action to move forward. So this also goes into other segments of deep growth work that are beyond the scope of this podcast. But yet again, another reason to get support for your own growth, particularly if you're in a state of very deep ambivalence. So lastly, help is here. If you do feel like you're actually on a turning point kind of moment, I invite you to come to my website, growingself.com, go to the blog and podcast page. There you'll find access to the Love Collection, and you'll find a special section that I put together called Relationship Clarity that does a deeper dive into some of the topics that I've been talking about today related to like that individual growth work to help you figure out what you want to do that can cut through some of the noise and get clarity if you're in a situation where you're like, yeah, Lisa, that all sounds good, but I don't know if I want to do this work. I might be too far gone. there's help for you there. And then, of course, if you take nothing else away from this podcast, please realize that couples have got to grow together. This is how it works. And to have really effective leadership and guidance to support each of you through this growth process can literally change the life trajectory, not just of you, but of your entire family. And that kind of support is very rare. We have people come to Growing Self all the time who have tried marriage counseling once, twice, even 3 times, and it was not effective. Thankfully, these people have the tenacity to be like, well, maybe we just haven't found the right kind of help yet. They're right. They come to us, they have a different kind of experience, and it changes things for them. But the realization that I think many people don't have is how vastly different the experience can be when you try to connect with the wrong person, the wrong provider to support you through this. I think many people in this moment of crisis, they seek help. They go to marriage counseling. They think, we've tried everything. This relationship obviously doesn't have a future because marriage counseling failed, having no idea that the licensed clinical social worker that they went to see or the licensed psychologist that they went to see was actually practicing outside the scope of their practice and never had the ability to help them. Furthermore, fun fact, we sometimes have people come to our practice really wanting to use their health insurance to pay for marriage counseling. Health insurance can absolutely pay for family therapy that is for the purpose of diagnosing and treating a mental health condition, a diagnosable mental health condition in one of the partners. And it can be a very powerful therapeutic modality for that. So PTSD, major depressive disorders, all kinds of stuff. Family therapy is very helpful, and it is 100% appropriate to use your health insurance for that. And to use medical health insurance, what a provider needs to do is make a claim that one of the people in this couple has a psychiatric diagnosis, and what we are doing here is treatment of said psychiatric diagnosis, and they have an obligation to conduct the therapy in alignment with those goals, including keeping case notes that document the fact that that's what we're doing here. If they're not doing that, it's insurance fraud. And if they are doing that, couples are wandering into a very different kind of growth experience than the one they really want. They think they're here to talk about their connection, to improve their communication, to grow together in the way that they've been talking about today. And this therapist is sitting on the other side of the office thinking about, okay, well, clearly this person is dealing with a generalized anxiety disorder. And so as soon as we get that into place, then maybe these experiences would be different because of the involvement of health insurance. They have to do that, or they could potentially be penalized for again, insurance fraud if that's not what's happening. So I just wanted to share that with you as you're considering where and how to get help. Think about your goals and what kind of specialist would help you achieve those goals. Working with a marriage and family therapist is absolutely vital because of the systemic training, the nature of this work. And what I've found and what we practice here at Growing Self is layering on top of this very powerful coaching methodologies that take like the best of what we know about evidence-based couples and family therapy, but then applying them in a coaching framework that takes two people. Nobody has a mental health condition. We're really there to say, what do you two want this to be? What are the obstacles? what are the growth opportunities, and how do you each need to evolve differently, actively in order to create this outcome? That's not therapy, that's coaching. And so I just wanted to like lay that on you so that you become a very empowered and informed consumer, like who asks questions like, okay, great, we're here for help with this. How would you help us create the change that we're seeking? And if you get an answer that sounds really mushy or that doesn't make sense to you, get a second opinion, because, many couples wait way too long to get help. And by the time they do, it can feel like a Hail Mary pass. If you connect with the wrong person in that make or break moment, you can leave feeling worse about your relationship instead of better. It can rob you of the hope and the possibility that you really need to see this through. And so I just hope that you consider that as you're thinking through your options and your next steps. Of course, if you would like to work with anybody in our practice, you can come to growingself.com and schedule your free consultation meeting with one of the therapists on my team that I know and trust to really create the transformation you're looking for and that you deserve. Okay, so I hope that this was helpful for you. Again, share this with your partner, share it with people you care about who might be struggling with what we've been talking about today. And I will be back here next week with you as your partner in growth to support you in your love, happiness, and success. All right, take care.